Welcome to Faith Gateway Live. My name is Mark Smith, and I'm the general manager of Faith Gateway, a site dedicated to helping you grow and share your faith. On today's episode, we have three special guests. The first is author and speaker John Eldredge. John is a counselor, teacher, and the author of numerous best-selling books, including Wild at Heart, Epic, and Beautiful Outlaw. He is the director of Ransom Heart, a ministry restoring masculinity to millions of men worldwide. John loves fishing, bow hunting, and great books. He lives in Colorado with his wife, Stacy. Our second guest is Sam Eldredge, who is the co-author of Killing Lions. Now, Sam loves to drive motorcycles, sail, and adventure with his wife, Susie. They currently live in Minneapolis. My co-host today on Faith Gateway Live is Chad Cannon, who is the vice president of Nelson Books, a division of Thomas Nelson. Chad and I work together to find the best authors and then get their books and resources in front of the best audience. So welcome, gentlemen, to Faith Gateway Live.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah,
Glad to be here. So good to be here.
Good. So before I kick it off to Chad, I want to remind our audience that during the next half hour, you can tweet your questions live using the hashtag #KillingLions. So, Chad, why don't you take it away?
Thanks, Mark. And John and Sam, thanks for taking the time. It's an honor to be with you and sharing the message of Killing Lions with the thousands across the country. Wild at Heart, as I'm sure a lot of people tuning in has been a book that has impacted them greatly. I know as a teenager, it shaped me as the man that I am today. So thanks for just all you do to pour into that and pour into men. And I can remember probably almost a year and a half, 2 years ago, our team first learned about Killing Lions and this book of you and Sam coming together to write this book to help young men through the trials they're facing, and maybe a little differently than when Wild at Heart first came out. So tell us a little bit about the title, Killing Lions.
Sam, you want to take the first pass?
Sure, yeah. We got the title from a Maasai tradition. I remember reading a story about a young man that was coming to the United States to pursue his master's degree and his doctoral degree, and he was from a Maasai tribe. And what had happened in their tribe, and what is so ingrained in their culture, is that if a lion attacks and kills one of their livestock, they need to rise up against it and strike the animal down. And that story just struck me as being so intense that you would actually have to go out in the bush with a spear, defend your livelihood, and slay the offending lion. And after successfully doing it, you are treated as a true man in the tribe. And we just were so struck by that metaphor of really to find something in this passage into young manhood and to actually feeling like we had accomplished something. We had gone through a rite of passage to become recognized internally and externally as a man.
Yeah, and then you have of course, you have the biblical parallels. You have David's story when he faced Goliath. He says something really remarkable. If you remember, Saul tries to talk him out of the story, of the act of taking on Goliath. He's a young man, maybe just a teenager. And David says, oh, don't worry about this. He says, I've killed bears and lions. This won't be a problem. In other words, there were rites of passage. There were key moments in his life that he had gone through that gave him that kind of settled assurance that I can handle what's coming next.
That's great. Yeah, there's a viral article that went viral last week about just the fact of the millennials aren't getting married until much later, and part of that is research that women are finding young men not marriage material. So Sam, kind of you start the book kind of framed up that way of you're now married, you got this family, just life is different. So what are some of those trials that you think people in your generation are dealing with, and obviously you kind of tackle in the book?
Yeah, well, the book really started out when these conversations happened after college. And up to that point in my life, I think the biggest struggle or question or fear that I had to face at all was like, do you want white rice or brown rice at Chipotle? Do I want to take wood shop or badminton? And it was like very small bars. And then all of a sudden, I was married and I was moving to a new state, and I have this diploma, but I'm not quite sure what to do with it, and I need to find a job and work. And so all of these issues about like finding meaning in work and feeling like a man, and how do I handle this woman that I know nothing about? We can't see me communicate very well at the beginning, and there's all of those pieces of just the world feels bigger and scarier, but we want to know how to walk well in it.
That's great. And John, why do you think the decade of the 20s need to be reframed, and how you bring that to life in Killing Lions?
Yeah, two reasons, Chad. First off, Sam's generation are the kids that grew up in the divorced households. So my peers, our generation, we were the divorced generation, and so a lot of these young men did not grow up with dads. They didn't grow up with a great man in their life to kind of show them the way. That's one reason. The other reason is that for millennia, thousands and thousands of years, young men learned life in the company of older men. You worked in the field together. If your dad was a tailor, you were a tailor. If your dad was a carpenter, you were a carpenter. And that kind of passing on of knowledge and wisdom and experience, and oh, hon, here's what to do when that happens, and oh yeah, this is what that's about. About 100 years ago, we came up with a new model of doing manhood, and we have this idea now that here's what the 20s are about. You go away, maybe to college, maybe a trade school, the military, and then we just kick you out into life. And there's this idea that a good young man goes and figures it out himself, and that is a crushing thing to do to a young adult. We're not meant to figure life out on our own. So what we're trying to do, Chad, is reframe the decade of the 20s, partly by taking the pressure off and saying, look, this whole decade is discovery and development, exploring your dreams, experiences, finding out who you are and what your place might be in the world. And part of our hope in offering guidance and counsel and direction is also just to get that weight off of young men who feel like you're on your own to figure it out. Good luck.
Yeah. Thanks for that. And as a reminder, those that are watching, the audience, if you want to ask John or Sam any questions, go ahead and tweet those in using the hashtag #KillingLions. We'll be answering those here shortly. So feel free to share those. John and Sam, you guys took out, obviously this book is a lot about adventure, and part of that was months ago you went on this epic trip. You captured it on film. You told these stories of men really trying to step into manhood, and there were older voices and wise men that spoke along the way. Tell us a little bit about that journey, and maybe one story that just pulled out that you'll never be the same because of that epic adventure.
Yeah, it was an awesome trip. It was actually framed it around something we did when we were in high school. Towards the end of the school year, we would go out to Moab, Utah with just the guys, and we'd go camping and rock climbing and mountain biking and jump in the river and just kind of be dirty and covered in sand for a couple of days. It was awesome. It was the opening of summer. And so when we were envisioning this trip, we really felt like we needed to go back. And we needed to invite not only a few younger guys in, but also a couple older guys, because that is the message of Killing Lions, that there are all older men in your life who can speak into you. And it ended up being more epic than we had planned on. 100-mile bike ride along the White Rim Trail to kick it off, and there were crashes and broken bikes, fortunately no broken bones.
Near-death experiences.
Yeah, it was intense, and I mean, we knew that it was going to be tough, but we didn't quite know how tough it was going to be. And I think the obvious one for me was that I trained like intensely for several months, wanting to be able to do that ride and feeling like it was kind of my idea, and I was making sure the trip was going to happen. And my knee blew out about 70 miles in and was just done, and I knew I couldn't keep going. And pushing through that disappointment and discouragement was huge, because it wasn't a matter of just getting in the truck and being fine and kind of, okay, I'm disappointed, get to finish the ride, but I can move past that. It was like, now I'm in this trip and I want to be genuine and I want to be engaged, and the disappointment that comes against our dreams, I feel like ended up being huge because it applies to more than just that trip. But it was awesome, and the videos are killer. No pun intended.
Yeah.
So John, you were just sharing with me earlier that there's now over 260,000 views of these videos and over 1 million minutes. So these videos are already inspiring people. The book's inspiring people. You can see all of those at killinglions.com. But from your perspective, and even through the book, what's the one takeaway that you had from that trip?
Men learn by doing. I mean, it's just, and again, this is like ancient knowledge that's been lost in the age of technology. This little baby, right? We live on our smartphones. We live on our laptops, and that's not how men learn. You don't learn at Wikipedia. Men learn by experience. We learn literally through our hands. We learn through trials that we face, and so we go out for this epic 8-day adventure, and we got way in over our heads. I mean, it was, we had some very hairy experiences. Blaine, Sam's brother, was leading the climbing one day. Blaine fell. Serious stuff, but that's where this gets lived out. Learning how not to lose heart, receiving words of validation from older men, overcoming fear. Luke, the youngest brother in the clan, we didn't know Luke had a fear of heights until we got over this 110-foot free-hanging rappel that, and it was the only way out. I mean, you had to go down to get out, and every guy had their own fear to overcome. And so what started out as an adventure trip turned into the real deal of how you face your fears and the validation that comes through that.
That's awesome. That's great. I saw those videos and I wanted to be a part of it so bad. So it just looked like an epic journey. What would you say are the 3 benefits? Someone's gonna just dive into this book. Obviously, a traditional John Eldredge book with his son Sam. This bantering back and forth. It's beautifully written. But what are those 3 benefits that someone's gonna walk away reading Killing Lions, just feel like that was well worth my 4 hours?
Well, I'll take a pass at one. One of the things is the experience of fathering. So many of us didn't get that, and actually I didn't get this growing up. I grew up in an alcoholic home, and there wasn't this kind of thing offered, and so part of the experience of Killing Lions and the conversation and the give and take and the advice and wrestling with questions of young adulthood, part of it we're hoping is that young men and frankly young women as well will experience being fathered through the pages of the books, filling in some of the missing pieces that they didn't get.
Yeah.
Dan, what would you say is another key takeaway?
When I was writing this book, I really felt like I had a couple of my guy friends in mind. And one of the things we say in the prologue is that we feel like this book can be a manifesto for a generation. Like, I want actual answers to be brought up, and for actual truths, and for passion, and for excitement to be a tangible effect on not only my life, because I did get to experience that, but the lives of my friends that I was thinking of. Like, you need this, and you need this, and you need this piece. And I think that the huge takeaway is that there are answers, and that you aren't alone, and that you can actually have a fire within you after this book.
Yeah. I mean, and you tackle tough subjects. I mean, you tackle money, you tackle love, you tackle college, you tackle calling, you tackle all of that. What's the one chapter that really stands out to you, Sam, that you just loved writing and kind of talking and having conversations with your dad about?
It's probably a tie. The first would be the chapter on identity, because it was the first one where we had to actually derail a chapter on women. We were asking good questions, but we realized that we couldn't go very deep until we actually tackled the deeper issue, that I was operating out of a certain identity that had been given in college, and I needed to shed light on that, and God needed to shed light on it, and actually let it go and embrace a new identity, both so that I could have these conversations with my dad and pursue a woman and actually realize how I was operating in life. Like the chapter on identity was huge for me, and the book wouldn't have happened without it, honestly. Like it's an older conversation, one of the few that kind of turned me away from feeling like I was living a life of shame and like I wasn't worth being a writer or investing in. And so actually releasing those things allowed me to pursue this book, pursue a project, pursue writing again, and it was huge. The other tie is chapter 9, which is living with Eve, because the more you get to know who you're living with and what marriage means and the unfolding joy and all of that, like it's spectacular. It's one of like my favorite things. I have a buddy with me now that will go adventure with me and wake up in the morning and eat breakfast with me, and it's fantastic. And I think we get to share a little bit of that enthusiasm, because you're like, there is those facts that guys aren't getting married and we're pushing it off, and it's fears of finances and of growing up, but there's some really good stuff there, and yeah. I love those chapters.
It's awesome. How about you, John? What's one chapter that just stuck out to you?
Yeah, I love the chapter on identity as well. Another favorite of mine is where we talk about work versus your dreams. Like how to hang on to your dreams when you're still in jobs that you hate, maybe, or feel menial, feel like you're dead end, that sales job you hate, working at Starbucks for your 5th year, just those feelings of losing hold of your dreams for your life, and how not to lose heart, how to hang on to your dreams while you understand what God is up to in the current situation. I just think that's huge for people. I mean, I know guys who are 50 that need that chapter.
Yeah, that's great. Well, we're going to start taking some Twitter questions here. Again, if you are on watching this, feel free to tweet questions using the hashtag #KillingLions. First question is from Brad Feilmeyer, I believe. I think I'll have you answer this, John. My wife is soft, and I'm trying to get her on board with this. How do I do this without scaring her? And I think that's about kind of by doing, this manhood by doing kind of aspect, I think, is where that's coming from.
You know what, that's a really, really common fear, actually, and that we encountered a lot of that when Wild at Heart came out as well. And the really important message to men is do not leave her behind. Like, a woman wants adventure as well. She wants to live in a great story. She wants to feel like she's sharing in the meaning. And even in the battle. And so the key thing is to invite her in versus you kind of racing off to, now I'm going to go slay the lion or chase my dreams or whatever. And that really plays into her fear of being left behind. So I would say it's important for the two of you to dream together. Dream together. Like small stuff. What would you love to do next weekend? What would you love to do next summer? The bigger stuff as well. Like, what are your shared life dreams? Because once you're married, your dreams need to be common. They need to be shared. You need to be together in this life.
That's great. One of the things I love also about the book is Sam's vulnerability and openness to even question and doubt this whole thing. I mean, he grew up in the house of the author of Wild at Heart doing this and growing into a man. Is this belief in God, is this real? Kind of talk, Sam, a little bit about that conversation that you had with John in the book, without giving too much away, obviously.
Right. Well, where to begin? I think actually the conversations that we had week to week ended up being the foundation of this book idea. And those conversations didn't start until this question, the question about the Bible and faith. And I had been at a Christian college, went to a public high school, then kind of went the other direction for my undergrad. And after 4 years, what I was left with was that doubt is the ultimate virtue, and that you really can't know very much, but also that you should feel very guilty for not going to church more and reading your Bible more, which I found to be a little bit strange if we weren't to trust either of those things. And as a thoughtful guy, as a guy of a millennial generation who were like taught to question and seek knowledge and all of that, I was left with like, Dad, what do I do with this? Like, can I actually trust what is in the Bible? Can I trust anything? And where do you begin? And it was that conversation, which was fantastic, but it also began to lay that framework down for back and forth about faith and hope there, and finding truth, and good books to be reading like Orthodoxy. And it was huge. And actually, it was that conversation. It was that existential crisis that began the conversations. I don't think that I was necessarily in a better or worse place because I had the dad that I do. I think actually because I have the dad that I do, I was able to question and wrestle with these things. It was like, well, this doesn't line up. So how do we handle this?
Yeah, great. So we've got another question that came in from Chris Britton. I'll have John and Sam both answer this, but maybe John, you can tackle it first. What can I tell my teenage son to prepare them for what's to come? Wow, that heart changed my life. Thank you. So he's, obviously loves your work. But from advice to a teenage son, what should he be prepared for in what's to come?
Oh, I mean, so many things rush to my mind. This might come as a surprise, given that we're talking about lions and all that stuff. But the most profound thing you can tell him is, I love you, and I will always be here for you. The deepest need in the human heart is for father, and the father-child relationship is the most profound on earth because we have a heavenly Father and the Son, Jesus Christ. So knowing your love, knowing your delight, knowing your approval is water to a thirsty soul. But then what you actually want to do is you want to set up a series of experiences where he can really discover who he is and what he loves, and that he has what it takes. And like trips like to the Moab thing, and adventures and backpacking, but also great books that you're reading together, movies that you watch, and have conversations. You're preparing a deep sense of identity in him.
That's great.
So, hey, I'm going to jump in here and with a quick little offer here. We got a special offer on the book, Killing Lions, and the Killing Lions Journal, John, which I want both of you guys to talk about the journal. So with there's a button below where you can get 40% off. It's a great deal on both the book and the journal. So, but there's one question I want to ask since I jumped in here. My favorite show of all time is probably The Rifleman, okay? I love that show. It's the 60s because every episode, Chuck Connors is taking an opportunity to teach his son something about life. It's this father-son relationship, just like this book. It's about the relationship between the two of you and the life lessons going back and forth. That is the 60s. So now, what is the media teaching, between, men and boys, and what is it teaching boys about becoming a man now? And can we get back to how do we get back to the Rifleman days?
I think the media is teaching young men that you don't need a father. I think it's teaching young men that there really isn't a lot of difference between men and women, that masculinity and femininity are not as unique as the scripture seems to imply they are. And I think there's a kind of a thing of older guys are idiots. The father figures tend to be very bumbling, characters, kind of goofballs who maybe come through at the end, but they're not trustworthy, and that's just a horrible view. Again, we're meant to live in community. We're meant to learn life together, and the older people in your life have a lot to share with you. I guess, Sam, what would you say? What's media saying?
I mean, our generation grew up around the internet. Like, it blew up and has grown with us, and the effect of that was that marketing was huge for us. Like, we were the lab rats, the guinea pigs of marketing. And so the byproduct of the fact that we have been marketed to and told like this lifestyle and this and buy this thing and the other, like, we have these sensors for if something is genuine or if it's not. And it's like it is our sensor to the world. The world has gotten smaller because of the internet, and also larger because you can kind of go anywhere. And so the media, it's really interesting. Like on the one hand, we're kind of shamed a lot by the baby boomer generation, and so I think there is a little bit of resentment on our side towards those older guys that just we push back against that, and we want meaning, and we want to live well. And so we have this whole world at our fingertips. We're able to find the answers to so many things, and we're watching governments toppled by social media. And so there is this like, what is my purpose? Because there's this new sense of aimlessness. There's this new sense of, if anything is possible, then nothing is also possible, because I can just wander without a point.
Yeah. And I think a really key point, to go back to something Chad said earlier, is doubt has become the preeminent virtue for the millennial generation. But the problem, the problem with that is the human soul craves answers. Like, you cannot park in doubt. You can wrestle with it, you can journey through it, but there are answers. Christianity offers answers, and so that idea, celebration of doubt, I think, has been really damaging to a whole generation of young people.
Yeah, that's so good. You can't park in doubt. That is awesome. That's tweet-worthy right there. It kind of leads into the next question. You were talking just about media and how that's impacted kind of that pre-millennial, even millennial generation. This sounds like it's coming from a father. How can I encourage my sons, 16 and 13, to try new things without feeling them pushed and coerced? And I'm assuming, we're living in the world of video game generation. As a parent, you're struggling to get your kid off the couch and to be active. And other things as well. Social media, they got this device that they have access to the world. So how can a parent take some tangible steps to really help them without feeling coerced?
Yeah, okay, nobody wants to feel like a project. So your motive is huge in this. The motive is delight. The motive is delight. I delight in you. I love being with you. Let's do stuff. And then it's paintball, it's the water parks, it's skiing, it's going for bike rides, it's going in the garage and fixing the bike that got broken. It's shared experiences. Like, I just can't say enough about that. Like, that's the whole thing the Boy Scouts was built on, and the Scouts continues to be a great place, especially for those single parents listening who don't feel like they have strong role models. There's no uncles around. There might not be dad around. Scouts, those kind of things, because it's experience. Let's go try this. Let's go do this. Let's go try motorcycles. Let's take a motorcycle education course and learn how to ride bikes. But all in the context of delight, joy, versus you're a project and I'm trying to fix you.
Yeah, I would totally echo that. If I feel like the way I'm living, like if I'm really into video games and that mom and dad is kind of embarrassed and mad about that, and they're going to try and change me into somebody who loves the outdoors, like, I'm going to fight that. If that's the reason, if that's, like, video games can feel very empowering. They can feel like I have a purpose and like I have something to offer, and that, like, the reality is so clear. And if what mom or dad is coming to you offering is something else that feels genuine, like back to that sensor of whether or not there's something true there, that you're not trying to fix me, but that you just have something to offer that's worthwhile, like, I want to go paintballing. That sounds great, but I don't want you to fix me.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. So we've got another question here, and maybe we can try to make some sense of it. As I come from 3 generations of no fathers, women should not train boys after a certain age, but when there's no dad, help. So no fathers around. It sounds like maybe this came from a woman. How can I still live in this adventure with my son without a father? And you shared how important a father is, obviously, but void of that, how can they still experience that as a family and lean into the manhood that's in every boy?
Huge question, very relevant question for our day. A couple thoughts. You need to let your sons experience danger. It's the one thing moms, because moms are mercy and moms are love and moms are protection and all that great stuff. It's, I don't want you going skiing because you might get hurt. I don't want you riding motorcycles, you might get hurt. I don't want you playing football, you might get hurt. You know, I mean, everybody gets this, right? And letting your son experience danger is one of the big difficulties that moms face. That's one thought. Another thought that's I really want to offer encouragement. Find a contact. There are good men out there. There are a lot of good men out there that would love to offer to a younger man. You need to get him in a context to be with those. And so it might be at the Y. It might be in the youth group at church. It might be in scouts. It might be in sports. Get them into the the youth sports thing in your community. There are good men out there who are offering fathering, and therefore you just get to be mom. That's the wonderful news. You don't have to be mom and dad. Get them into a context where there are older men who can offer some dad.
I would just add one piece that that's what this book isn't meant to be, that I had this nice ride because my dad is John Eldredge. That the book is supposed to be pointing us on and finishes with fathering is available, and you can seek it out, and that comes partly through God and partly through God bringing older men into your life. And partnered with the journal, like there are things to go do and to seek out and to ask questions and to find. And I mean, in my life, I had my father, but I also had pseudo uncles, and the mechanic was important, and all of these, like the karate teacher was important. Like, fathering is available. You don't need to be the son of John Eldredge to receive fathering. Like that's a ridiculous idea.
Yeah.
Well, not only that, but the core of Christianity is that you have a father.
Right.
That's good. So true. So one more question came in from Twitter. I think this is a great question, and I think you do a good job of hitting on this in the book and even through kind of Wild at Heart and the different events that you do in boot camps. What advice do you offer older men who are still seeking their path and adventure?
The core of Christianity is that you are a son and you have a father who loves you. And I could tell you hundreds of stories, very practical stories, of men whose lives have changed when they began to do this. They began to say to God, Father, I need fathering. Would you father me? I need fathering. And then all of a sudden, invitations, things happen at work, mentors come along. I mean, God wants to father us. It's available.
That's good. So the journal, and you guys talk about the purpose of journaling and what that means as you kind of go into this adventure and journey, and we've created a resource obviously that comes out with the book. Kind of tell us a little bit about your passion for journaling and why you're so keen on having something as a resource for people as they go through this book.
Yeah, Sam, tell them about the journal.
I knew you could do that. Actually, when thinking about doing a journal, I was thinking about like the standard just questions and answers. Like you read this chapter and then here are your questions, and then this is your little placement where you write the answer into. And I was like, I don't know many young guys that would do that. I certainly wouldn't necessarily, and so I didn't want to create something that I wouldn't use. And so what we ended up creating was a more diverse tool. Because guys do need reflection on these chapters, but we also need to go do things. We need to experience other mediums, and we need to have conversations. And so those are the 4 ways that we divided up the journal into, chapter by chapter. So we start off with some thoughts, reflecting on like some key points, in case you miss it, because sometimes you do. But then we recommend other things to go read, other things to go watch, like killer movies that line up really well with the topic. And then the utmost thing that we need is to go do stuff. And so we just recommend a few different things in each chapter of what can bring the strengthening and the training there within that context, and then a few conversation starters in the forms of questions. And I feel like what we ended up with was actually something that I would totally use and I would totally hand off and totally believe in and think that it could be a really cool tool.
That's great. Well, hey, hate to cut this short, but we're out of time now, and I really want to thank John and Sam and Chad for your time and answering these great questions. And for the next few days, we're offering Killing Lions and the Killing Lions Journal that Sam just mentioned. 40% off if you use the button below, and that's available now. Again, I want to thank each of you for being on Fake Gateway Live. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Thanks.
great. Love to be here.
Thanks, Mark.
All right. Bye. Bye-bye.